Hey there, I am happy to announce the launch of J. Brown Yoga Talks Premium. I've often mentioned how much I appreciate getting emails from listeners who share with me how much they're getting from the show. And those emails, they always end the same way, by saying, please keep doing it. And if that's a sentiment you share, if you value what you get from listening to this podcast, you appreciate that there's a new episode every week, then becoming a premium subscriber is the best way to show your support. Not to mention, you get unlimited access to the full archives. It's J. Brown Yoga Talks Premium. Go check it out at jbrownyoga.com/premium. That's jbrownyoga.com/premium. Okay, we're back. This is J. Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is J. Brown. Welcome to you if you're new, and thank you if you're returning. How's everyone doing? How's the day treating you so far? Maybe it's just starting. Maybe you're in another part of the world and it's already gone by. I don't know. It's funny how time works. Well, I am very happy to be with you. I've just returned from the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. Had a good 5 days there. Much smaller group than what I was doing in Australia recently. Let me give just a little shout out to my new friends and regular podcast listeners, Mary and Sarah and Ashley. What's up, you guys? I know you're listening, and it was great meeting you. Very fun to have those of you who've been here with me along the way, even over the last few years, when you guys show up to my in-person teaching gigs and we get to hang out. It's always very rewarding and fun. So good meeting you guys. And it's always just funny to me. I think I may have said this before, but you know, when you go to these retreat centers, all the food's prepared for you, you know, and it's a lovely thing. Often the food is quite delicious, and you know, it's amazing how much salad I eat when someone else is prepping the vegetables. I really love salad, but you know, I don't eat as much of it as I would if someone else made it for me. So it's good to fill up on some salad. I would say, you know, the one thing that was different about Omega, you see, it's been a long time since I was there, over 10 years since I was last at the Omega Institute. And it's pretty much exactly the same as it was. Like, almost nothing's changed. I mean, the staff's turned over. There's like all new people, but the place itself is pretty much exactly the same. The one big difference is that there is now free Wi-Fi access available all across the campus. And that wasn't the case before. You had no phone reception in the mountains there, and there was no internet, and I would be sort of like trapped in my room without any media, and I would always write and do other stuff. And I had it in mind to like do some writing, and you know what? It didn't happen. Why? Because I had a Wi-Fi connection, and I didn't feel like writing. Instead, I just binged on old Mad Men episodes. I just started getting into Mad Men. I didn't catch it the first time round. I'm like in season 4 now, and damn, it's good. Mad Men, what a show that is, right? Well, in any case, sometimes it's good for me to turn off for a little while after hours and hours of intense engagement. I'm sure my fellow yoga teachers out there know what I'm talking about, but it is getting harder and harder to find time where I'm unplugged, you know? Really gotta make sure that it's a directive, you know? I have to really, I'm working on it. I'm doing some new things, like leaving my phone near the door and turning it off and trying a few things. Really gotta, I've talked about this in the past, about screen addiction and getting more measured and setting better boundaries when it comes to digital devices. I'm going to renew that. I want to start talking about that again. I'm catching myself for too long. And you know what else? You know why that's coming up for me is because of my eyes. And I should tell you about that too. Those of you who emailed me about my eyesight and my cataracts. Maybe you remember I mentioned that I went to the optometrist I think it was a month or two ago, and I had noticed that there was some difference in my vision, and they thought that it might be cataracts. Well, I went to a doctor and had the full battery of tests, and it turns out the doctor does not think that it is cataracts. Apparently, I have something called keratoconus. Do you know what that is? It's a condition of your corneas and the shape of them. Basically, the corneal tissue weakens and the corneas bulge, and so it ends up being shaped a little bit more like a football instead of a baseball. It messes with your eyesight. And apparently it might be somewhat genetic, but the other main cause, at least this doctor thinks it might be eye rubbing. And you know what? That may very well be the case, because I am a habitual eye rubber. It's something I do all the time. It's like a soothing, stress-relieving thing that I've been doing for years and years and years, rubbing my eyes. Apparently, all that rubbing of my eyes may have weakened or softened or loosened, that's the right word, loosened the tissue, and that has caused it to change shape. And you know what? That's pretty much the whole freaking theme for me when it comes to what I have done to my body in yoga practice. I've pulled it apart and made all of my joints too loose, and that led to all this pain. Well, apparently I did it to my eyeballs also. Well, the good news is that apparently it can get better. There are some weird surgeries they do, but apparently if I stop rubbing my eyes, it very well could just get better. In any case, it is what it is. My eyesight's okay. I can still see fine. At least I have a clear idea about what the situation is. Now I'm really having to do this practice of not rubbing, or doing a rubbing around my eye just to satiate the desire. But it's a real interesting thing how just the smallest little thing, smallest little tweak could have an impact, like you just shift the wheel of a ship a little bit, and then the back end swings around later, when you're 47. Anyways, it's just life stuff, which is totally relevant to today's talk with Nischala Devi. And I have been mentioning this conversation to you over the last few weeks. I've just been so excited to share it with you because it really helped me, and I've been wanting to sort of shift my, perspective or energy. See, I'm going to use the word. I'm going to say energy. I'm going to shift my energy some because I feel like I've been a little too focused on money and sort of trying to tackle these kind of big issues or questions in my mind, and just it leaves me sometimes feeling very helpless, and then you hear me feeling kind of stressed out, and you hear me all up against it trying to get these intros out and sounding stressed, right? I'm sure some of you listen every week, you can hear I've been a little bit stressed some, right? And there is a way to counter that. And I do that in myself, and I'm not always expressing it here on the show. I'm sort of letting this be an outlet place. And then I'm in my studio practicing by myself. And I started thinking, I really need to bring those other aspects of me and what I'm doing, and not just bring all the complaining or whatever to these intros or to the show, to make sure that the show isn't just about having a critical eye, but is also about fostering the directions that we really want to go in. And Nischala is somebody who is focused on that. And she has a new book called The Namaste Effect. And I was so happy to receive an email from her and to read her book and to have this conversation with her. It really warmed my heart, and it is a great pleasure for me to get to share it with you today. Before we get to it, though, let me say something to all of you out there who are managing studios and using MindBody Online. Longtime listeners, you know what I'm going to say here, right? I think that you want to consider checking out today's sponsor, Karmasoft, because Karmasoft is an online studio management system that I think serves like an independent yoga studio better because it doesn't have all the crazy bells and whistles. It's much more streamlined and easier to use. And the company that you're dealing with feels more like a person than a corporation. Rudy Senecal, the owner of Karmasoft, he's been on the show before. You can go back and listen to the conversation I had with him about my experience of using the software at my center and of dealing with him and the company and what a joy that was. It really is, in my mind, far superior, and I think it will make your life a lot easier. Go to karmasoftonline.com. Let me also drop my stuff. I am going to be in Carlisle, Pennsylvania at Anahata Yoga June 28th, and I'm going to be at the Lehigh Valley Yoga Festival July 13th. And if you can't make it to those gigs here in my part of the woods, you might check out my ongoing live stream classes, which are moving to two-way this week. I'm very excited about that. You could take classes with me from wherever you are in the world. You can find out about all those gigs and my live stream and the rest of my stuff at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, I think that's fine. I really just want to get us to this talk with Nischala. I will touch base with you on the other side, tell you a little bit about what's coming ahead. But that's it. Let's get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Nischala Devi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is this Nischala?
It is. Hi, Jay. How are you?
Oh, Nischala, I'm well. I'm so happy to speak with you.
And you, Jay. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, no, thank you. I was thinking about you, getting ready to talk to you. And, it's been almost 2 years now since we spoke last. Can you believe that?
Way too long.
Well, I'm just amazed by how the time goes by.
It's unbelievable.
And it's just, I didn't finish it, but I read a good amount of your new book, and I'm so in need of the Namaste effect right now. I don't even know how to explain it to you.
Jay, that's exactly why I wrote it.
I mean,
everyone is. I think our hearts are hurting. We need to have something that's uplifting for our hearts. Otherwise, this world is much too painful right now.
Oh, I know. And that's the thing. I mean, well, first of all, before we get into that, I love that we just went right there because that's so where I need to go.
See, that's what 2 years is one measure of time. Yeah. Hearts measure in another time.
It's true. And I always remind myself, and you're someone who spent time in India, and it was my trip to India that I first realized that time didn't exist because it takes 3 days to get there and no days to get back. And I could never really figure out how that was possible. Like,
isn't that funny?
It's not possible, but we pretend it is.
Last year I did it on my birthday, and it was the longest birthday I've ever had in one day.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that, having read your book as much as I have, is that it's clear that you understand the universe works in very mysterious ways.
Yes.
And it seems to me that, you and I scheduled this well in advance of it happening, much more in advance than I usually schedule these talks.
Okay.
And I just think that if we had this talk a month ago, I wouldn't have been in the place that I am now. And right where I am now is exactly the moment I need to have this conversation. So
I'm so happy.
It's lovely when those synchronicities occur.
It is. It is.
But before we jump into the real heart of the matter where we started, I just want to catch up. It's been 2 years. I'm curious how it's been going. What have you been doing for the last 2 years? What's the daily grind for Nischala Devi like these days?
Well, I wrote the book.
Yeah.
That was certainly, it's been a really busy time. There's a lot of changes in the yoga world that I've been involved with. Mm. And with all this yoga therapy and registration and online classes and all this, it's just been a lot. I did a few online classes and, I guess what I'm trying to do is keep my presence in the yoga world because it has become very much, what word can I use? Regimented or standardized in a very medical way or a very physical way. And I think that I'm trying to keep the spiritual aspect in it. So that's been keeping me pretty busy. Mm-hmm. As well as I continue my travels and teaching. So it's been a lot. Everybody keeps asking me when I'm going to retire, and I just laugh and say, I have no clue because there seems to be a constant need for what I'm offering. So I just try to keep up with it.
Oh, gosh. Well, please don't retire. Not yet. I need your voice out there because what you're doing in terms of, I don't know if it's pushing back because I don't think that's appropriate given what you're communicating, but what you're putting out there to counter maybe in terms of like the medical or like yoga therapy realm. Right. I'm a little bit over here doing a similar thing just in terms of like the way that more, conventional yoga group classes have become about fitness.
Right, exactly.
Where if you have a vinyasa class and it says that on the schedule, you'll have like all these people show up because they want a fitness thing. But if you're trying to do something more contemplative, something that's actually getting to a broader picture of yoga and not just this physical attributes, then it's very hard. You're getting like 2 or 3 people to show up maybe.
You're absolutely right. Yet, if you continue, and this is what I've been doing over the years, I just continue, even when there were 2 or 3 people, and now people are needing it so much more, they're coming back to that now. That's at least my experience. Before I would do a class on the sutras, and there's maybe 10 people that would come. Now I'm getting 60 and 80 people coming. So there's something that's happening. The world as it is creating a need for so much more. So just be patient with it and keep on doing what your heart's telling you to do. Where are you, Jay? Where do you live?
Right now, I live in Pennsylvania. I live in Easton, but I'm coming to you from Allentown, which is not so far from there.
Yeah, I know. I was born in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's right. We spoke about that last time, I think. That's right. Yeah. I was just moved here.
Oh.
Yeah, literally, I think I had just made the move. See, the synchronicities abound.
Isn't that funny?
I'm much more like settled in here and my life's here. And like you said, it's very interesting the way things have changed because like you, I do a lot more teaching online than I ever did before.
Oh, interesting.
I still do some traveling, but it's definitely a new world. And it's funny, that does take me to sort of what I was thinking about talking to you again today, because last time we spoke, you said something that I have been quoting ever since. And it was, you said, the yoga's free, but the electricity's not.
Okay, that's true.
And I've said it to many people, and everybody, like, their hearts turn on and they appreciate that sentiment so much. And frankly, though, that does kind of point to where we started. Like, I this week was talking on the podcast about how the fact that we're like banning abortions in this country and how I didn't feel right just having pleasantries because I'm feeling all this anxiety.
Right.
And it's really on me, and it was a little bit overwhelming. And I have techniques and things that I'm doing and what I do in my life to help counter that. But I know that if it's getting the best of me, and I have those techniques,
right, exactly.
It's really become challenging and confusing. So in a way, now to be reading this new work that you're putting out, this Namaste effect, which I have to admit, on several occasions while I was reading, like this cynical part of me, it kind of wants to rebel, but I'm not going to give into it.
Thank you. We can't give into it because there's too many other people that have, and that's why they're trying to turn back the time, because they feel like they're losing control. And the feminine, not just the women, but the feminine aspect, which is the heart, is starting to come forward, and people are freaked and they're trying to quell it. This reminds me of what happened in the 1600s with the witches. It's the same kind of thing. They felt the women's power and they tried to get rid of them. Do you know about 5 million women were killed during that 300-year period because they said they were witches? It's the same kind of thing. Women, not just women, but those of us that are moving forward with the heart are trying to change the world and say, don't build walls, build bridges. But I don't know what's happening in the world. But do you know there's a massive march tomorrow? Did you know that?
I did see that, yes. Hopefully we'll get some pendulum other direction.
Well, we need the men marching too.
Yeah.
We need to really see the men out there. And I can't tell you what it does to my heart. I've been working on this issue my entire life. And it's just shocking. It's just shocking. I just can't believe it's happening. I can't believe it. But I'm just hoping that this book will, that's why I reached out to you. I want as many people to know about that there's another possibility. You can love people. You can be open-hearted.
Yes, we can, even though there's all this horrible stuff. So let's talk about that. Okay. Let's talk about
let's not talk about the horrible stuff.
Well, we are going to have to because we can't deny it. But what I like about what you're saying and what I need, why I want to talk to you is because I've been, I wrote this month and I'm from this very kind of discerning, analytical, kind of somewhat anxiety kind of place. And I know that in my own personal practice, when I find myself doing that, my yoga is about sort of another thing that I do. And I feel that's what you're doing in your book. And that's what I want to do with everybody listening today. And
the other thing I'm hoping to do is shift the practices. The people that are already practicing, shift it so it includes some open heart practices also, not just physical, but really what can you do, including service, especially service. And I don't think enough people put that in their practice or consider it a practice.
Well, let's talk about why. It seems to me that there's a underlying premise that what you put out and what I believe starts from, which is that in each of us, there's this eternal source of love and compassion. And I believe that to be true. In my cynical moments, it's when I worry that, you see all this fear and anxiety and anger and you're like, is that really human nature, or are we inherently good or not? I want to believe that we are, and you're making the case that we are. So please tell us, why are we inherently good?
Because we're born that way. We're born inherently good. Look at a baby. You look at an innocent little baby, and your heart opens. You have to, because of their purity. And so what happens to it? It doesn't go away. It just gets buried. When the mind starts taking on different likes and dislikes, it starts to make the heart recede. And we're no longer, if we look at our faces in the mirror, we don't look like the face we had when we were a baby. Sometimes it's fun actually to go back and look at a baby picture of yourself and say, oh, look how open my face was. Look how bright my eyes were. That's because we knew who we were. We knew we were part of the divine. And somehow we've forgotten because we have these labels put on us. I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, I'm a garbage collector, whatever it is. And we forget that we are divine. That's first and foremost. And then if we have all those labels, we look for labels on other people. Oh, he's a lawyer, he's a doctor, she's a nurse, she's a pilot. And we forget, no, they're divine beings just like us. And that's, I think, what the yogic practices are designed to do, to bring us back to that place where we remember. It's so simple. It's not like it's teaching us or putting us in anything that we're not already there, but it's reminding us, this is who you are. Remember. And with that, the world can change. It has to change.
Oh, I believe so. I that is my meditation. That's what I love when I opened your book, and it's what made me weep. Is like that's the meditation I do when I feel overwhelmed. Is I think of the first moment of inhalation, like the moment that this life that I'm currently having started.
Yes.
In that moment when I inhaled, and it'll end with an exhale. With the inhale, there was nothing wrong with me. I was like entirely whole.
Yes,
as you were saying,
exactly.
there was no lacking about me. I was the complete wonder of the universe in manifest.
Right. But you still are.
I know, that's the thing. We're not. But then you said our perceptions form, and somewhere along the way we stop seeing ourselves like that.
And that's why we have to get reminded. That's where all the traditions of the world are just reminding us. At least that's what the intention originally was. To remind us of really who we are. We're created in the image of the divine. We are the divine. Whatever way they say it, they're there to remind us. Don't get caught up in all this that's happening around you. Because when you close your eyes, there's only you and your inner divine self.
Well, then let's clarify about what we mean by divine, though, because sometimes divine doesn't always mean like the interpersonal, or like you last time you were here, we talked about you had this monastic time in your life, and then I love when you talked about how you got out and you had to pick which mustard to get. Right. But the idea that when you say that we're divine, to me that doesn't mean like a lofty place that's up on a mountain, but it means like intensely personal.
One of the challenges of either speaking and especially writing about something that is not contained in our everyday existence is there are no words for it. So we have to pick words that we then have to define as what they mean. And this has been a challenge. It was a challenge with the secret power of yoga, with the sutras, because the English language doesn't have translations of these amazing Sanskrit words because they're vibrational. And so what to choose? Well, God has too much bling these days. It's too powerful. People set off. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that.
That's why they're banning abortions in the name of God.
I know. Isn't that bizarre? I mean, the whole thing to me is, and then it's all men that are banning abortions.
Right.
Older men.
Yeah.
So it's just, what word could I choose? And sometimes I go with cosmic consciousness. It's really long. Mm-hmm. And to abbreviate it as CC just doesn't do it. So for who I am, I love the word divine because I think you can put any meaning you want to it. It can be something that it's a divine piece of cake, which means it takes you out of your normal taste. It can be a divine person, which means somehow they take you out of your normal way of thinking. Or it can be that aspect of you within you, the divine, that takes you out of who you are. So that's why I like it. It's just, you can make it whatever you want. And if people are offended by it, I just offer them to choose another word that brings them to that place within them, that nothing else exists, that there is no prejudice, there is no right and wrong. It always reminds me of that beautiful quote from Rumi. Meet me in the field beyond the place of right and wrong. I'll meet you there. And that's to me what the divine is. It's meeting beyond all the dualities. And I have to use something as a writer and a speaker. So I chose divine. And again, if it's not suitable, choose something else. I'm easy.
Yes, that has been my impression of you, that you're pretty easy about stuff. And you know what I also was thinking when I said it is that, like, even in your book, you go between sort of two I don't know, I don't want to say voices, but there's two things that I felt that I was getting. Like some of it was like some pretty straight up like chakra theory, which we can get into some today too if we want. And you do it in a very clear, concise way, which is helpful. But that kind of talking, like when we're talking about values and energy vortexes and stuff, that sometimes makes it seem almost supernatural. But you do a thing where you tell a lot of stories, which I do too, because the stories seem to ground those things in something actual. And there was like a specific story you talked about, even just where you like breaking protocols in the cancer ward and getting in bed and weeping with someone, even though you're not supposed to do that. And to me, I think of that as the divine. And I think sometimes we don't think of like the little mundane trials and tribulations as the divine so much as we think of energy vortexes. And I think that you can separate those things out.
And it is an energy vortex. If you see someone in pain and you're drawn to them, it's your heart and their heart drawing together in an energy vortex. It's just different ways of explaining it. And to me, when I take it to my head and explain it that way, often I lose the heart connection. So that's why I think stories are so powerful. And the other reason for the stories is I want everybody to understand that it's all within each of us. We each have our stories, and we've each had our times when we've experienced the Namaste effect, when we've been with someone and all mind thoughts go. We don't care what age, what sex, what religion, what color. We don't care about anything. All we care about is we're with that person at that moment, and something happens, we become one. And that's what I was trying to say to people. And that's why I gave so many different illustrations of different ways that we actually mesh, mold with each other. And if we don't keep doing that, we're going to see more of what's happening in this world right now.
That is the big challenge, right? The making the we, the two, into the one.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Now, before I want to talk about what you mean when you say the Namaste effect, but I first wanted to ask you about there's like a phrase, like as I was reading, I made little notes to myself, and I wrote this one phrase that I wanted to ask you about, where it said, stable moments between the highs and lows. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by the stable moments between the highs and lows?
Good catch. Well, we all know highs and lows, and we're all, I don't know if people are old enough to remember, but we used to use pinball machines, and there's still some around. And I
used to have one in my house when I was a kid.
Okay, there you go. So you remember the excitement was to get that ball moving. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to and sometimes we would shake it so hard it would actually...
You could cheat if you shook it hard enough and get it to go to the spot that it wasn't going.
And I think our lives are like that. We go for the highs. We love the highs. And then as we see in nature, the higher the mountain, the lower the valley. It has to happen like that. And if that's what we like, then that's great. So you walk around, I'm high, I'm low, I'm high, I'm low, and you keep going back and forth like a pinball machine. If, however, we start to get more stable in that center part, where it's not that it's boring, and that's what everybody thinks, oh, it's boring. It's just you don't go quite as high, and you don't go quite as low, but instead it's a nice little hills and valleys instead of peaks and valleys. And that's where we are able to really relate to another human being. When we're really high, often we don't take other people's sorrows and sufferings. Oh, get over it. It's okay. You'll get another dog. Don't worry about your dog died. It's okay. Because we're not in the heart when we're in the real highs. And the same with the real lows. Oh, you're complaining about your dog. Well, I just didn't get into college or whatever it is. So, but in that center place, in that stability, we start to experience, oh, here's another person who's hurting. Here's another person who's in joy. Let me understand where they're at. Let me bring my heart to them at this moment. And that's what we call as the Namaste effect.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that so much. I've embraced what people often call boring. Like you said, it's not boring. I don't think it's boring at all to me. But to someone who isn't embracing those kinds of ideas, by not having highs and lows, people think of that as boring. But in my experience, like the most important sort of transformations in me have happened in these periods of what people would think of as boring. Like, 'cause that's where these spaces, these moments between highs and lows, where I have a greater sense of myself.
Exactly. It's to me what I would say is a hum. There's something very relaxing about it, yet you're able to be dynamic and vital at the same time. Whereas the highs, you're going to come down from it. You just know that. And when you come down, often people crash. So it's nice to just have that. You can have some highs, of course. Life has its peaks. But keep it more of an even way. And you see how much more you get accomplished, and you see the person next to you. One of the things I mentioned in the book is look next time you're at a supermarket. What hand receives the cash or the credit card? Maybe that hand needs to be touched. Maybe that person, look into their eyes. Who are they? I remember one instance I had. I was shopping late on a Christmas Eve, and I had to get last minute things for an organization I was part of. And I went in and I saw this woman. She was checking me out. I think it was at a Target or Walmart, one of those places. And it was about 10 o'clock. And I said to her, just in a joyful manner, I said, I bet you're happy. Your shift is almost done, because I knew what time the store closed. And I looked at her, because I actually looked at her, and I saw her eyes change. And I said, are you not going home? And she said, no, I have another job after this. I won't see my family till tomorrow. And that in that moment, we connected. And that to me is that Namaste effect. If I had been busy in my mind, what am I going to do now? I have to take this back. I wouldn't have connected with her. And I still remember her face and her eyes and touching her hand. And I think we miss that when we're always either at the highs or the lows. So having that stable hum.
Yeah.
Like the second part of Om.
Mm-hmm. And in that moment, that's when the two of you became one.
Yes, exactly.
And you make a good point, and that's why I liked the phrase so much. And something I focused on practice quite a bit too, where if you're trucking along too fast, then at some point it's almost as though you're kind of along for a ride.
Yeah.
Like it's like a momentum takes over, but you're not really steering it.
Right.
As opposed to being in a place where you really steer the ship and you feel equipped to do that. And when you're in that place, that's when you see things. That's when you can notice things. That's when you can see that person. And even in that beat moment, could tell, oh, wait a second, this person, you were aware and present enough to be with that person.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Otherwise, you don't see it. You miss the opportunity. And once you miss the opportunity, you can never go back. Mm-hmm. It's like someone asking for money on the street. If I'm preoccupied or even on the phone or reading something or doing something, I miss their need. And I can't go back to that point. I have to be in the present. And aren't we being taught that all the time in yoga? That's what it talks about. Be in the present. Be in the present. You can't live in the past. You can't live in the future. But we forget. We get busy and we forget.
I know, but this Namaste effect, this is the whole reason why I practice and teach yoga. It's like, It's the only reason why I do it, because it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy way to go.
It's really not. It's really not.
But it's those moments, and I have so many of them too, where there's that student who comes and there was a woman who used to always come to my class, and she always had this kind of cross look on her face. Uh-huh. And I really tried to reach her, and she seemed very resistant. And at some point I kind of gave up, but she kept coming, and I was always very confused by that.
Yes.
And at one point, time went on, and she totally learned the practice, and I totally saw something shift in her, but I never spoke to her. You know what I mean? Because she asked for that space, and I gave her that space. And sometimes I really wondered, she seems to hate me. Why is she under the class so much? But she just whatever was going on with her. But then there was like this one day, and I'll never forget, where I would always be sitting at the desk, and she would leave, and I would say goodbye to people. But at some point I stopped saying goodbye to her because she never turned around to say goodbye to me back. And it always felt weird. And one day she was leaving, and I didn't even say goodbye to her because I never did. And she stopped at the door, and she turned and she smiled, and she just said, "Thanks, Jay." Wow. And it was like it was just like, that's the only, I don't ever need to teach another yoga class again. That moment that you're describing. Exactly. That's this Namaste effect. It's the whole reason why I do any of this.
Exactly.
It goes right to where we started. That's where I'm reminded. That's where I'm in the awe and wonder of that first inhale moment,
But you have to slow down enough to be able to see that. You have to slow down enough to understand what's happened. I mean, that example that I gave in the book about the ministers, that little experiment that they did with these really good people, but they were rushed. I don't know if you got that.
I'm not sure tell us what you're talking about so people listening know.
They did a little experiment where they called a group of ministers at 8:00 on a Sunday morning. And they told them that the minister that was supposed to give the sermon got sick. And could they stand in for this? And they had to be there at 9:00. This is 8:00 on a Sunday morning. And so they said, yes, of course. And they said, okay, the talk is on the Good Samaritan. So I don't know if you all know what the Good Samaritan, but it was in Samaria, people were thought to be really rough and not kind.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of Jay Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.